Let's keep it off the books. Not a secret. It's off the books. Joey Jugs.
Thank you so much for tuning back in. While young men in America are turning back to Christianity, with 42% of guys under 30 now saying religion is very important to them, which is a big jump from just a few years ago, young women are heading in a completely different direction: witchcraft. And it has exploded in popularity among them. From just thousands of practitioners decades ago to estimates of 1 to 2 million today, it's become the fastest growing religion for young women in America. And when I found this out, absolutely mind-blowing. While young men are finding peace, serenity, and answers in the Christian God, they're going back to the original church, Orthodoxy, Catholicism. Young women, they're picking up the tarot cards, the crystals, and turning back to the God of this world. I don't know why. So what I did was I wanted to start scouring the internet to look for answers. And what I found was funny, also disturbing, and it was pretty insightful. I found some funny Instagram memes. I found something called witch talks, which are disturbing TikToks involving abortions and spells. And then I came across this awesome interview with Rachel Wilson where she kind of explains some of this stuff. So let's get into it.
Think of the archetype of the witch, like the wicked witch with the big nose. She's always ugly and haggard. She's always dressed in black, wearing the pointy hat. She lives in a cabin off on the edge of the woods, away from the town. She scares the children. She kidnaps and eats the children. And she think of Snow White, think of Sleeping Beauty, like all of the fairy tales that we have. The witch is always trying to hurt the young, beautiful maiden, trying to poison her with an apple, trying to steal her youth, steal her beauty. These archetypes exist for a reason. There's always been some women who don't compete well within the hierarchy for mates. So if you're a pretty girl that men like, you're charming, and men want to marry you, the system works great for you. But there's always this minority of women who, for whatever reason, whether they're physically repulsive to men, maybe their personality type is very combative and unappealing for men, and they're kind of shunned by the patriarchy. It's like, ugh, go over there. We don't really want anything to do with you. We want the beautiful, young, nice girls that are going to make good wives. And throughout history, and this is not just according to me, there's a witch who teaches about this at New York University that I reference in my book. This is from her perspective as a second-generation witch herself, that those women have always gone outside of society and practiced witchcraft as a way to have some power, have some influence, get some revenge, take back what they feel they deserve, that they're not getting, that the rest of society is benefiting from. So this whole thing where men choose women and women choose men and they get married and they have a nuclear family, if that doesn't work for them, witchcraft is very appealing because it's always very anti-patriarchy. It's also very anti-Christian. It's a way to...
Which I think is probably one of the biggest appeals for young women today. They've been brainwashed to think that men are evil and the patriarchy is evil. So what happens is, I think that's the reason, one of the reasons why witchcraft is so appealing to them.
Kind of fight back as a woman who the system doesn't work for. So that's why we have the archetype of the witch. But in actual history, witches, everybody's heard of like the witch trials and, burning witches at the stake and things like this. And in the middle of the 20th century, there was this big effort to make the witch into a sympathetic character, starting with L. Frank Baum in The Wizard of Oz. Now, L. Frank Baum's mother-in-law was named Matilda Joslyn Gage. She was one of the prominent suffragettes, a good friend of Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton.
Ew, look at these ladies. Oh my, yeah, no wonder they got into the occultism and the feminism. Like, yee.
The two big figures of women's suffrage. And L. Frank Baum lived with her for a long time and was very heavily influenced by her, and he wrote the character of Glinda the Good Witch after her. Now, Matilda Joslyn Gage wrote a book called Woman, Church, and State. And this was her explaining how she felt that Christianity and the state came together to oppress women, and that Christianity was the root from which women were oppressed, and that if we want to have real feminism and we want real women's liberation, we've got to get rid of Christianity. So when L. Frank Baum wrote The Wizard of Oz, this was a big influence on him. And that was the first time that we've seen somebody try to make a witch into the good guy, basically. But then that kind of continued.
Now everything you watch, the witch is the good guy. Like everything. They even did that with Wicked. Like she is the good guy. And it's weird because, some of the culminating scenes are so overly satanic, but yet we're like rooting for her. It's a psyop.
Post-World War II, when the culture wars began ramping up again, we saw stuff like the old TV show Bewitched, where it's a witch named Samantha who's cute and adorable, and she wiggles her nose and casts spells, and she marries her husband, and her husband's always telling her not to use her witchcraft. You be a normal woman. You don't use your witchcraft. You be a good wife. And that was another kind of cultural attempt to say, if you read between the lines, it's saying, hey, women and their powers and influence, whether it's their sexuality or their spirituality, why should that be oppressed by bad men? Maybe the witch is really the good guy. Maybe she's the rebellious woman that's not going to let men push her around and tell her what to do. And then now, in the last few years, we have Wicked, which is this other big cultural phenomenon with Ariana Grande. And again, we see a witch character.
Remember, this is the first time I've watched this interview all the way through. I just seen some snippets of it online.
Who is really the good person but is being painted as bad when it's unwarranted, and she's actually this sympathetic character who's fighting for what's right, and she's just misunderstood. So throughout all of history, it was never that way. Witches were persecuted, and people think that's because they were opinionated women. That's not the reason at all. If you actually go back and read some of the things that were being written around the time of the prominent witchcraft trials, a lot of the people who were, not saying that there weren't people who were wrongly accused or wrongly tortured or anything like that. There certainly were. But a lot of the people who were persecuted by the church for doing witchcraft were abortion providers. So witches had herbal remedies and knew how to do like kind of primitive surgical abortions and things like that. They had tinctures, they had herbal remedies to induce abortions, and they often did do ritual magic. That's where the broomstick comes from. It's a little graphic, but in my book I explain where the idea.
Wait, what? That's crazy. I'm going to look that up while this continues to play. What were these chicks doing with the broomstick? I really want to know.
Of the witch riding the broom comes from. So in medieval times, there was a practice in witchcraft of using it wasn't LSD because that hadn't been synthesized yet, but there were like natural things like ayahuasca or other type of psychedelic drugs, hallucinogenic drugs. Mushrooms would probably be the primary one. They would make like a paste or a lubricant out of that and put it on a broomstick and use it in a sex ritual. So your sex is always the most powerful way to do ritual magic because the emotions are so heightened, and the belief is that you can kind of access the divine through climax, through this heightened emotional state. So that's why almost every famous occultist you've heard of, like maybe somebody like Aleister Crowley, they're always doing ritual sex magic. It's because it's supposed to be the most powerful type of magic. That goes back to the temple prostitution, that goes back to ancient times. So witches would indeed use hallucinogenic tinctures as like a lubricant, and then use something like a broomstick and do ritual magic. And that's where the idea of flying on a broomstick came from.
Hey, quick question. How many different AI...
I don't know if that's something I wanted to have learned or not, but that's crazy. That's insane.
It's a really interesting historical fact that women have always used poison as like a primary means of unaliving someone, whereas men tend to use more brute force, that sort of thing. And as we developed testing to identify if somebody was murdered with poison, poisonings went down. It's kind of interesting, but that was like a primary method. If you wanted an abortion, if you wanted to kill someone by poison, if you wanted to do ritual sex magic, you went to the witch who lived outside of town.
So if you had to break down like the real reason the witch trials happened, the burnings, like would you say that all the women accused were accused of those two specific things, or was the Catholic Church and the aristocracy like more mad at the actual magic they were doing? Like what were they upset with?
I think it was both.
Okay.
It was just that those were the things that were easier to prove. And again, I'm not saying there were not periods where maybe the Roman Catholic Church or the Puritans in New England didn't get hysterical and start persecuting people who were wrongly accused. I'm sure that happened. But another thing that happened during the witch trials that we never talk about is that at least 20% of the people who were burned or drowned as witches were men. So plenty of men got accused of witchcraft as well.
Wow.
And I think it was a time where you do have some political things complicating matters. The church is trying to...
Do you guys know that? When they bring up the witch trials, that 20% of the witches that were killed were men? Interesting.
Keep power and maintain power. That's true. But it was the belief at the time that if you had somebody who was doing these things, that maybe the wrath of God and his judgment is going to come upon you and your people. If there's somebody in the town performing abortions on a regular basis, we need to get rid of that. So from the perspective of the church, these were things that, were illegal.
I'm cool with that.
They were crimes
I'm not mad at 'em.
and they needed to be punished. But yes, if you want to think of it this way, they had legitimate reasons for wanting to persecute witches. And then, at times it probably did get out of control. And there were probably a lot of people who were falsely accused. And it did become a vehicle for people to make false accusations. But the idea that there was no basis for it whatsoever, and this common trope that you hear now that, the witch trials were just awful patriarchal men who didn't like women who had their own brains and their own thoughts. And so if you tried to speak up about an injustice, they would burn you as a witch. That's
propaganda.
Historically not accurate at all. Yeah.
Right.
In reality, they were providing abortions and poisoning people.
Yes.
And people were
There you go.
concerned that would spread. I mean,
Yes, exactly.
yeah, you never hear that, so that would
No.
make
Never
more
hear
sense.
that at all.
I was always confused watching like the Salem witch trial, like plays or like movies about that. I was like, what was going on here? Like, were people just crazy? But
About these things.
I do want to connect the Protestant Reformation and how it paved the way for the rise of feminism. But first, I'm not sure if you've seen this stat. It was in 2002, only 30% of American women identified as feminist. And by 2020, that has doubled. And among Gen Z women, 68% of them identify as feminist. And at the same time, the fastest growing religion among Gen Z women in America isn't Christianity and it isn't atheism, it's witchcraft.
Yes.
Do you think the rise of feminism and the rise of witchcraft is a coincidence, or do you think they're the same movement?
I definitely think they're the same movement. So that's why in the book I take a lot of time to show the
What do you guys think? Have you guys ever tied those two together?
historical thread
Right.
from ancient times through medieval times all the way till now. And of course, I'm not going to make it a 5,000 page book where I'm covering every single century of history. I just kind of weave some important moments together through the ages to kind of show it started as a spiritual battle. It's still a spiritual battle. And then the politics gets weaved in, of course. So Susanna Budapest, who is a Czechoslovakian witch,
Look at this lady.
she was an immigrant here in the 60s. I think she actually came during World War II because she was escaping some of the stuff that was going on in Eastern Europe at the time. She was the first to get witchcraft laws overturned in the United States, in California, where she lived, under religious freedom clauses. And she
Boo.
herself, who is still around, I believe she's still around. She was around during Trump's last term, leading spell casting rituals against Trump with all her witches that are on Facebook and TikTok who follow her. She's a much older lady now, but she's still practicing witchcraft and, cursing Donald Trump with her.
It's like a
with her spells.
13,000 member Facebook group, I believe.
Yes,
Like it was like a
yes.
lot of people.
It's a lot of people.
And they did it against Brett Kavanaugh too,
Yep.
I believe.
Yeah.
What were they trying to accomplish?
Imagine these cat ladies just sitting around with their bottles of their bottles of wine. You know what I mean? They're cats, and they're just sitting around TikTok and Facebook, writing spells for Donald Trump and Brett Kavanaugh. Hilarious.
Let's just give him bad luck.
Yes.
Okay.
To prevent them from coming to power, prevent them from getting, their agenda passed. Because, of course, from their perspective, Donald Trump's going to enslave all the women and Brett Kavanaugh's going to enslave it's going to be the Handmaid's Tale, right? That's what they think. So this woman said that feminism is just the political arm of a spiritual battle. That's according to a witch herself. She says this is a spiritual battle, and feminism is just that political arm to help us with the political power aspect that we need to have the freedom to do things like practice witchcraft. Abortion, that's a big one. When Roe versus Wade was overturned a few years ago, and it went back to the states, there were multiple organizations, including Native American organizations, the Satanic Temple, and multiple Wicca and witchcraft covens who contest.
That's true. I mean, the Satanic Temple were trying to make sure that that abortion stayed legal because they said that it's a ritual. It's like religious freedom. It's a ritual, so don't get in the way of our religion.
Did the changing of the laws because they said abortion is a ritual sacrament for them and should be protected under religious freedom laws.
That's crazy.
So this is not Rachel. People, off the bat, when they see me and they hear me start talking, they go, "Oh, she's one of those crazy Christians that thinks everything's the devil." Like I'm Bobby Boucher's mother in The Water Boy, and I think everything's the devil. No, I'm telling you, they're the ones who tell me witchcraft is a spiritual battle for feminism, for women's freedom, for revenge against the patriarchy.
You're saying that the church, it's a church of Satan?
Yeah.
Is suing the state of Texas?
Yes, they did. They contested the change in the abortion laws.
Like the heartbeat bill?
Yes.
Because they see abortion as a ritual sacrifice, so it's necessary to their church.
Yes, exactly. And if you go on TikTok and you search the hashtag witchtalk, you can find dozens of female creators on TikTok who will show you how to make a ritual out of your abortion. They'll show you how to make an altar, how to use the tissue.
So while young men are learning how to properly cross themselves and prostrate and do the Jesus prayer, young women are doing abortion spells with their abortion. Oh my gosh. Where are we at today?
Tissues that are removed from you in a ritual magic spell, and ritualize your abortion to give you power, to give you things that you want in life. Like this is, people think this is Rachel being crazy. It's really not. Like you said, witchcraft is the fastest growing religion, especially among Gen Z women in America. And they do mostly identify as feminists. And they do.
Like, I'm not saying that every feminist is a witch, but I would say that every witch is a feminist. You know what I mean?
Think that from a spiritual perspective, these things are empowering. So that the reason I have an argument that is original to me when I debate people on abortion, and this will show you that what I'm saying is true and that this is how they actually feel. Because in the 90s, you probably don't remember because you're very young, but Bill Clinton would say abortion should be safe, legal, and rare.
Yep.
Right? That was the progressive stance in the 90s. Now we have switched to my body, my choice, abortion on demand. You are not allowed to put any restrictions on it. No uterus, no opinion. And what this kind of proves when I put forth this argument, it goes like this. I'll ask a woman if she thinks abortion should be legal. She'll say yes. And I say all the way up until birth. And sometimes they'll say yes. Sometimes they'll say, well, I would cut it off here. I would cut it off there. And I say, what about this? A woman goes in to get an abortion at 8 weeks. And the abortion doctor says, good news. We have new technology. We have artificial wombs. We've just created artificial wombs that are successful. And you don't have to kill this fetus. You can have it implanted into an artificial womb, and you won't have any legal obligation to it. You won't have any moral obligation to it. It's just going to be a simple laparoscopic procedure, no more risk than an abortion. And, the only difference is, rather than killing it and removing it, we're just going to remove it alive and let it gestate and fully grow and be born. I say, if there was such an option as this available, would you then still be in favor of abortion? And I've not once had a woman say no. Every single time they say, I still think she should be able to choose to kill the fetus.
Interesting.
And then I ask, why? And they don't really know. And they're hesitant. It's like they know I've kind of caught them in a trap. They know it doesn't sound good to people that they just said that. But really what they're saying is, women need power, and one of our greatest powers that we have is to decide who gets to live and who gets to die.
It is.
That this is like a deeply held ancient power struggle, and that women need the power to decide which men get to have babies and which men don't for any reason at any time. So it kind of just gives the game away a little bit psychologically, that even if they don't mean to phrase it that way, or even if they don't mean to put it that way, something deep in their brain is telling them, I need the power to decide who gets to be born. And that's like a very, very ancient concept. It is a holy sacrifice type of a thing within witchcraft.
The people who pushed for abortion saw it as ritual sacrifice.
Yes.
And what does that mean exactly? Like, what was that sacrifice that they're doing? Like, what is that based off of?
Well, it is based off of these ancient esoteric belief systems, and it is based off of like this inherent need for women to have power. We not having the power on force, having half of the planet be physically weak, your husband.
How did they rewrite it?
They literally went book by book through the Bible and gave their commentary. That's why there was like 14, your husband.
This is them rewriting
lesbian
the Bible.
Female pastors during the Second Great Awakening in the 1800s. This is how liberal the ethos was. And people don't know that. They think that everybody must have been like really conservative. But no, like the feminist stuff was extremely progressive. It was very socialist. It was very, 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 very progressive for its time. So these were women who started their own churches as open lesbians and called themselves pastors, and they rewrote the Bible from a feminist perspective. In the preface, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, who most people would assume was like a conservative Christian lady from the 1800s, said that she doesn't believe God ever spoke to anyone. She doesn't believe the Bible was divinely inspired. And if she could get rid of the Bible and Christianity altogether, wipe it from the face of the earth, that would be the best thing. But she said it's too influential. It's the most widely published and most influential book on the planet. It's probably not going away. So the second best thing we can do is subvert it. Is subvert Christianity and get people to understand that Christianity was designed to oppress women. It was written by bad men who wanted to keep their boot on the neck of women. And she also says in some of her memoirs that we're never going to get women to go along with this unless we can convince them that, men are actually dangerous. You got to be worried about, your husband.
How did they rewrite it?
They literally went book by book through the Bible and gave their commentary. That's why there was like 14 of them on the editorial board.
I guess the most important would be Genesis.
Yes.
Do you remember what
Yes.
what was different about Genesis in the feminist Bible?
They kind of took everything away from like the curse of Eve and stuff like that. And it's just their commentary on it. So they'll give you the passage and then they'll say, clearly this was written by a man to convince women to be ashamed of their natural station in life, and that there's something defective in women that causes them to be weak, which that's not the orthodox interpretation of Genesis at all. Some of this stems from Protestant misunderstanding of Genesis, at least from my view, and my book talks a bit about that.
Do you think Gnosticism is really the most popular religion on earth and people are worshiping it without realizing it?
I think parts of Gnosticism would be, yes.
like this idea
Yeah,
that
does Satan believe
God
he's
is
the
within
real
you,
God? And
in that like be your own, like there's like the girl boss part of it. There's like just do whatever feels right. There's like trust your intuition, all these
yeah,
things. And it seems like people really believe in that.
yes. Well, I think that's kind of part of the liberal Enlightenment ethos. I think that Gnosticism goes really well with that. I think it's, no kings, right? Liberty, equality, fraternity, the kind of the ethos of the revolutionary period where we're overthrowing monarchies. We want democracy and equality. No, why should we have all this authority? Why do you get to have authority? Why do you get to tell me what to do? And it's a very American thing. Like, it was actually a struggle for me in a lot of ways to write the book because it made me confront a lot of those kind of foundational Americanist beliefs that I was raised with. Now, the founding wasn't exactly like that, but it was a
That's pretty interesting. Rachel Wilson's breaking it down, and she also has a book called Occult Feminism that if you ever want to see like the roots of feminism and how we were sold a kind of a false bill of sale. When I was raised, I was told that feminism was a movement based on the equality between men and women. But when you read a lot, if not all, of the feminist figureheads and what their motivations are and how they describe feminism, it really didn't have anything to do with the equality between men and women. They didn't fight to join the draft. They didn't fight for other things to actually make things equal. What they really had a major motivator to do or motivation to do was destroy the Christian patriarchy, which is weird because I didn't know that a lot of the figureheads or most of them were all witches. Like most of the feminist figureheads were witches, which is crazy.
What do you see is happening right now? Like, what is the biggest psyop happening right now to women?
I don't know that there's anything super new. It's usually just like any attempt to remove illegal immigrants or shut the border down or anything like that is going to end up in The Handmaid's Tale, right? That like people are just gonna be put in cages and raped. People are gonna be, like that if we give the government the power to just like actually defend the border and, remove people who are here illegally or something, that this necessarily means, oh, you know what it is? The other one is the abortion stuff. So I think the biggest psyop is, and I've seen female political candidates on X saying this garbage, and I will correct them with facts and post it everywhere. I have Democrat women running for office in Texas telling people stuff like women are dying right now because they can't get health care because of abortion laws. And I'm like, no, they're not.
Not true.
Why are you saying, why are you?
Yeah.
They're like, well, women are hesitating to get treatment for miscarriages because they're afraid they'll get prosecuted for an abortion. And I'm like, I know a friend of mine who just had an ectopic pregnancy. It was an emergency and it was taken care of right away. That is not true. Nobody stopped us to make sure she wasn't having an abortion. Like, this is just lies. And if you look up the actual facts of it, you can easily find this out. But there are pro-abortion.
That's true. All that stuff where women are dying because they can't get abortion. It's like, no, they're not. Can you prove this? They never can. So Rachel Wilson is awesome. I applaud her on all of her work. Let's get into some of these awesome witch talks or let's get into some other videos about modern day witches.
Growing numbers of African American women in Maryland and across the nation are leaving traditional church worship. All of them are in search of something else, a spiritual belief that connects them to their ancestors and where they can feel more empowered to control their own well-being. They have found it in ancient forms of spiritual contact. Some call it witchcraft, a term they accept and embrace. For most of us, this is how we worship, a tradition that predates us all.
Oh no.
This too is an ancient art of worshiping,
those mangoes
not to God the
in her
Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, but to spirits and deities that span the oceans and date back to pre-slavery days in Africa. Are you in fact witches?
Whatever the situation calls for. So if
Oh,
you
man.
come to me with pleasantries. You being respectful, you'll get Glenda, the good witch
We with
of
Glenda
the
and shit.
suburbs. But if you come at me with negativity and meanness and disrespect, then you'll get Eveline. Your worst nightmare.
They have many names and titles and ranks within their belief system. They are college-educated professional women who've chosen to believe that theirs is a truer example of worship that is inclusive of the genders. It connects them, they say, to their ancestors and
Look what they're doing. With that's bananas. Yo, you can't make this shit up. What is this?
fills a need not found in traditional worship, though most of them grew up in the church.
I was raised Christian, all Christians in my family. In fact, my grandfather was a preacher in the South.
I also grew up Christian. I grew up Anglican in the Episcopal Church. The older I got, the more disconnect I felt.
I was raised Baptist. My father is a deacon, my mom a deaconess. I was in church all the time.
These women are part of a sect, Ile Ola Afefe Osa Meji, spiritual temple. They worship and offer prayers to Oshun, a predominant deity.
She's the deity or the Orisha of aesthetics, beauty, sex.
These women are LARPing.
Sensuality.
They are growing.
These ladies are full-blown LARPing, cosplaying. This is ridiculous. Imagine, where are the men walking through the door like, what is this? Get your ass back in the kitchen. Get what is this?
Numbers of African American women who have chosen for themselves a new life,
Playing with
leaving
the
the
fruit
church
like
in
that.
search of more meaning in their lives. And yes, it can be called witchcraft. At a recent convention in Baltimore, more than 200 witches gathered, a sisterhood, but their spells are for good, not for evil. In this ritual, the women are preparing an offering to Oshun on behalf of a woman in California who's looking for a mate. The omelet-type dish is sweetened with honey, believed to be a favorite of Oshun. Prayers are said over the offering and for the woman in need. A portion is offered to Eshu, the male counterpart of Oshun, and placed in a secret place beneath the stairs of this Odenton home.
Oh my
Using
God.
shells, they ask the spirit if she is pleased.
They're playing
4
craps.
shells are tossed to the floor, 2 land up, 2 land down. Bounce. The gift is accepted.
She accepts it.
The traditions may seem odd to most, a mystery to some, complex and multi-layered. But these daughters of the moon, followers of Oshun,
All right, I got enough of this. That's insane. All right, what's it?
My name is Kristen Soleil. I teach a class called Legacy of the Witch at the New School, which delves into the history of the witch through a feminist lens. If you want to talk about representations of witches in popular culture over the past 500 years, you have to really talk about representations of women in popular culture and in culture at large over the past 500 years. So the witch hunts ended around the 1700s, in Europe at least, and America. But of course the fear of witches continued, and at the same time they also morphed into kind of a joke, a horror story, something to scare kids with, to scare young women with, you know, don't walk this path, you may get into, you know, trouble with Satan or something. But it really wasn't until 1893 with Matilda Jocelyn Gage, an American suffragist. She wrote a book called Woman, Church, and State, and it reframed the European witch hunts as actually a misogynistic attempt by the church and state to police female sexuality, women's bodies, women's reproductive function, and that is
Because they were the ones predominantly giving abortion. So
to my knowledge, the first time the word witch was used in a positive way. And the funny thing about her is that her son-in-law was L. Frank Baum, who wrote The Wonderful Wizard of Oz.
What?
And so he was inspired by her writing to conceive of the witch as not only evil, but also good. So we have these polarities of the good witch and the bad witch, which then goes into, you know, the MGM film and sets the stage for the way we view witches forever, pretty much.
I'll get you, my pretty, and your little dog, too.
And then you have, like, I Married a Witch in the 40s, was sort of a
what
movement.
else
Samantha's husband Darren's really annoyed, etc.
What else we got?
You're a big dumbhead. You're calling me names.
All right, I get it. All right, let's see what else we got. What are these? Oh man, this is gonna be silly.
Yes.
I had to throw something.
We might have had a lot of coffee. And I'm still
Insert
drinking.
slurping noises. I'm like,
We're like a living cartoon. I love it.
Let me drink out of my cauldron.
So as the girls are drinking their get up and go juice, we want to kind of start with talking about ancient literature.
Okay, I'm not doing that one. I already had enough of these. I already had enough of them. Let's see. We're gonna go on some. Let's get on some. What's this on? This on TikTok. Let's get on some TikTok videos. So this is called Witch Talk. Let's see who she's talking about.
Dude, being a witch is so wild. I had an abortion in late 2021. Yeah, circumstances around it really fucking hard, like really, really difficult. But I already had one, and I just knew, I was like, this is what I gotta do this time too. Like, it just, yeah. And if you hate me for it, eat it. I do not care. However, being a witch and like going through abortions is fucking nuts. With both of the pregnancies that I had, I've had dreams of giving birth. And I don't just mean like it's a dream. I don't mean like it's just like, oh, I saw it happen. No. It's like a full blown, can feel my uterus contracting and then like have really vivid images of
How is she so animated and happy when she's really talking about ending the life of the innocent unborn? She's like, I just don't know how people are this disconnected.
A child wrapped up in my arm. But now I know. I just had that dream recently, so now I know for this one. I didn't have the baby, but I am birthing new life for myself, because that is the power of abortion magic. So now that I had the dream that the baby's born, here comes new life for me. I'm so grateful to be a witch. See you next time. Dude,
it's just weird. Oh my God. Just weird. What we got here?
How to practice abortion as a magical ritual. I am a witch who has had abortions and has used them as rituals. I've been through this twice. And it's birthing magic and death magic simultaneously. If you are a womb body who has made...
A womb body? What's a womb body?
...the decision to have an abortion, keep in mind that there is death and there is life. There has been a conception. There is life that has been conceived. Second thing you want to keep in mind is that there is going to be an ending. You're calling death. You're calling ending to that conception. You're calling ending to that cycle of growth within you physically. You're calling death to things. A death to growth of something. Something that's been growing in your life that no longer serves you, that you don't want around.
Well, there you have it. Witches
Oh man, let's see.
are now using abortion as death rituals. I'd say I'm surprised, but abortion really is just glorified child sacrifice already. As horrific as that video was, she was right about one thing. Abortion is calling death to something, but not just a clump of cells. Abortion is the intentional killing of an innocent baby in the womb. At the end of the video, she openly states she's calling a death to the growth of something that no longer serves her. It is absolutely disgusting to kill a child just because you deem them as inconvenient to you. This video is just one of many that shows how evil the pro-abortion movement truly is.
And what's even more evil is making a silly TikTok about it, right? Like a silly animated, anime-faced TikTok about it. That's probably a little worse as well. All right, what's he talking about?
Come. I want you. Come. You don't want me? Let me light a candle real quick. I'll see you. Did you ever do that? There was one situation where there was this guy, and I don't know what he said to me, but he really pissed me off. Like, it really made me quite upset. And I knew my power, and I knew what I could do, because I know that even when I said things, they would come to pass in somebody's life, right? So I was like, okay, I'm going to deal with the situation. I'm going to do a little spell. And in the spell ritual thing that I was doing, you'd light something up and let it completely burn. And when it finishes burning, it's done. When I started burning it, and it's paper, there was something written on the paper with different spices and herbs on it to really give it that razzle-dazzle.
Razzle-dazzle's insane. What?
When I lit it now, it lit for like 2 seconds. It lit for like 2 seconds, like this much. And if you know anything about lighting paper, like it lights, it stopped lighting immediately. And I heard one of my spirit guides whisper into my right ear, "Don't do that again." And I was like, first of all, you've never told me that. So, and I was very hard-headed, stubborn. It's like, I'm going to finish this guy. He cannot treat me like this. I began to light it again, and it lit halfway through, and it stopped. and I heard his mother's praying for him. You cannot do that to him. I want you. Come.
All right, a little bit of more insanity. What's this chick talking about?
I don't care what anyone else says. If you have a womb and you are a witch, you should be using your period blood in your glamour,
Wait, what's happening?
Self-love, self-obsession, spells. Okay? You should be doing it. Even your money spells, too. Okay? Because that is potent creation power. Alright? It is not the same as other blood magic.
Disgusting.
Okay? I don't care what anyone says. Even if you're a baby witch. Alright? And so I'm going to teach you how.
No.
Okay, I'm going to show you how I like to gather my period blood and how I use it in my spells, okay? First off, because I just started my period today, so obviously,
don't pull anything out.
We're gonna make a video.
Okay, never mind. I'm done. Never mind. Let's go to the next one. Sorry about that, guys. Sorry about that. I did not know she was going to fucking pull something out. Sorry. Okay, what do we got next? I apologize. Let's start with this one. Here we go.
Perfect. You're just in time. We're about to hex Donald Trump. Since he likes to make AI videos of dropping shit on the American people, we thought we'd just return the favor. While we're hexing in here, my dogs are shitting on the voodoo doll that I made of Trump. We're gonna start with some rosemary for protection, not for him, but for us, because we know how fragile his ego is. I'm now gonna burn an orange peel so that every time he tells a lie, his spray tan just slightly burns. And one last thing.
Trump is in prison. I don't think it's working, guys.
What a fucking loser.
I really don't think it's working.
You're just in time. We're about to.
Yeah, I don't think your spells worked, lady. I don't think your spells worked. I'm gonna end it off with this last one. Let's go.
Have you or a loved one encountered a basic art hoe only just to find out that she is into witchcraft and then shrugged it off as though it was inconsequential, perhaps just to smash? If you weren't instantly repulsed by the prospect of her believing that she can get whatever she wants and manifest things by crafting little spells in her dirty kitchen that has a sink full of unwashed dishes, then you may be entitled to compensation.
Right.
I'm not gonna act like this is a new thing. Niggas with my phenotype have been stuffing witches into burlap bags and throwing them into lakes.
I like this guy. This guy's awesome.
Since the 15th century. We're the granddaughters of the witches you couldn't burn. Well, we're the grandsons of the retards you couldn't lobotomize. Witches used to have to go hide in secrecy to practice their little weird bullshit for fear of the townspeople grabbing them and beating them with socks stuffed full of soap bars. If you were a neurodivergent woman in the 18th century, you better hope that your neighbor's cow didn't just die randomly, because they gon' get your ass. They gon' get your ass.
That's hilarious.
Gon' whoop yo goddamn ass.
All right. Well, hey, man. Learned a lot tonight. Oh, man. Wow. I'm kind of blown away by one of that last video where she's pulled out a bag of something. I'm kind of sickened by it. Yeah, I'm pretty grossed out. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. And I hope you guys maybe learn something. And if not, just know that, like I said, the quickest, fastest growing religion for young women in America today is witchcraft. And at the same time, young men are going towards the church. Something is wrong. And this is a sign of it. And if you guys want to add anything to it, leave a comment below, DM me. And if you like this stuff, man, just you can always subscribe as well. And thank you so much for joining me tonight. How you feel about it, Stella? You feel good about it? You feeling good about it? All right. Thank you guys so much. I'll talk to you soon.
Let's keep it off the books. Not a secret. It's off the books. Joey Jugs.